It was very astonishing. There was no Canadians, no human beings that had the love and the will to seek justice for this injustice. Imagine this. Yes, I guess you can't see. This is where we are. What if I did not go through this decades ago? I would have been dead already. And with America, with the grace of God, that I kept this alive since the March 30th electrical fire in my apartment due to negligence and electrical work by John and also the negligence by the individual who said he may have been the cause. Well, partly the cause because he plugged in a lithium, a whole lithium cell phone to a socket. He knew it was faulty. But the injustice of it is that due to a false, fabricated, unjust, totally irresponsible, disturbing, lack of any common sense by certainly terribly unfit individual that is the title of detective named KRUCZEK in 43 Division. Now, it's unthinkable to think that he, as been the detective on other cases, I'm not astonished, disturbed that this detective, so-called detective, will have came up with a conclusion that I lit a cigarette, and yes, the cigarette did save my life. Because if I did not smoke a cigarette and passed by a smoke sensor on the way to the bathroom after I had my meal, and if that smoke sensor did not go off, I would not have smelled that burning electrical or rubber, because I would not be a false witness in the truth. After I had found out and the smoke detector had stopped, that's what I told the officer who I spoke to for less than a minute, approximately, I believe. Check the office was taped. I told him that I was in the living room where I work on the computer. They did drop me on some food. And I was like, I left, go downstairs to the table. And the individual who had let leave the room, of course, he was homeless and was kicked out of his unit a couple of days after his wife died, because he was one of these. Paul Keaton had walked my dog innocent. And Keaton in the bedroom with my two cats, Mr. Wonderful and Miss Cat, who had 4 litters together. And I've had for anywhere from 3 to 5 years, Wonderful since she was a baby. Miss Cat was abandoned by an individual I had helped out because he was homeless. And he abandoned her. Now, when I came back from downstairs, and there's video footage of this, and it can be confirmed by my associate, Mr. Greco, I saw the dog, the bedroom door was closed. So I paid no attention to it. I figured I'll walk down and went in the room and sit in the back of the room by a chair where he normally sit and smoke his pipe because he always don't pick up cigarette butts, he says. And he smoked the butts out of the pipe because he couldn't afford rolling papers or cigarettes. So I did not know or thought that he left. And once I put out that smoke detector and I smelled something burned. I went to the room and I knocked and I asked him, Paul, no answer. Paul, no answer. When I opened the door, it was hard to open. And then a tsunami of black smoke came shooting at me. I thought I was dreaming. It was like so shocking. So I screamed, Paul. I figured that he was right there where he was sitting. I didn't know what was happening. I was totally just, Paul. I figured he was sitting there in the room. And the black smoke was zooming, and there was still some space, like a couple of feet, a feet or two, on the smoke. So I figured I was going to climb on that smoke and try and drag him out if he was there. Well, when I was going to bend down, suddenly there was a spark in the back where he sat. And at that point, the smoke was zooming, just engulfed the hallway in my room, in my apartment. And I screamed, Paul. And still in shock, I had the sense to scream, Anderson, out. And then I went, Anderson ran out. I pressed the fire alarm. Went down the hall and grabbed the fire extinguisher. Came back, it wouldn't work. So the smoke was so thick that it was engulfing it. So I was thinking, Paul, scream, Paul. And to the emergency exit, bang, that smoke fire alarm, that fire extinguisher. Then when I got back away, I started squeezing out my stuff, but there was no fire, just big black smoke. And when she wasn't hitting out, I just screamed, Paul. And at that point, I had to Anderson down the stairs. She had no leash on. And we shoot down the stairs. Yeah, wait for it. Saw Todd that came out of his room, his apartment, because he hears fighting. I screamed, it's a real fire. And I screamed at him. And then I went from there down to the 7th floor and smoked 187. No down to call. Maybe directly. And I ran downstairs screaming, where is the fireman? And this can be confirmed by the front lobby camera. And died from smoke inhalation. No firemen showed up. When they finally showed up and screamed, it's a real fire, get upstairs. And then they went to some door and they couldn't find a key for the elevator or something like that. And I screamed, I said, get up there, Paul's in the room. And then finally they were able to do some type of circuit thing and they were able to shoot. They only went to the 7th floor. As we got up to the 7th floor, they told me to get out the elevator. I said, no, I'm not. Paul's in the room. I think he's dead. And screaming, Paul's dead. Paul's in the room. And we got up to the 7th, the firemen, in the case of a real fire, were dropping all their fire equipment. And it was like, took so long for them to end up getting up this hill, and normally they don't go up to the floor, they go up floor down. So I jumped off at 7 and tried to get up to 9, but Anderson couldn't get up. And then I saw people coming down the stairs, And I screamed one of them was in his lemonade, and she was scared of the dog. So I told her, well, give me your scarf. It's got no leash. And she took off her scarf, gave it to me and put it on Hennessy. But Hennessy is 13 years old, and she couldn't go any further. So I went back downstairs, and I just basically collapsed. You can see it on the front lobby camera from smoke inhalation and just total exhaustion, freezing as hell. I had no socks on, whipped up pair of pants, and exhausted. And everyone passed by and ignored me. Now a cop passed by, a colored guy, and all he was caring about was taking away smoke. The smoke ain't, you can see this on the front lobby camera also, taking away the fire extinguisher from. Now, hold on, Judge. I can't figure out why would you be so focused on taking away fire extinguisher? And I scream at some people in the front, and I says, everybody's got socks. I'm cold. I'm cold. Nobody would give me a pair of socks. And I'm there, and it's like, can't breathe. The smoke is all in my lungs. And then, fireman, I told the fireman, and this guy came, and I said, the officer, and I said, yeah, well, I got up, smoked a cigarette, and when I was going to the bathroom, it set off the smoke sensor, and when I finished the cigarette, because sensors are very sensitive, psychological management done by housing, because a lot of people there have mental health issue and they want to get into their head. I said, then after I put out the cigarette, I went to the living room, grabbed a CD, I found out the smoke sensor, and the smoke detector stopped, but then I smelled something burning. And that is when I went to the hallway. There was nothing in the hallway. There was you smell no smoke. So I looked in the kitchen, there was nothing there. And then, so I went to Paul's room, and I knocked, and Paul was dead inside. That was it. I said, okay, well, Mr. Clark, there's a bus outside for anyone, and you can go and sit in the bus. There was no bus. And I said, oh, the bus was on the other side. And we went on the other side with the bus, and I sat in the bus. And so they told me, exhausted. And matter of fact, Mary showed up, and she was cold. I had no pants, no clothing. So he said, he's going to go get some clothing and so on. And I'm hungry as hell. So we went across to my friends at Authorized Mama Hub, got some food. When I came back, the security guy, DeAngelis, says, yeah, Kevin, I want to talk to you, I want to get a statement. Then I said, all right, they're going to find you another place to stay, right, and so on. And that was the conversation with DeAngelis. So after we went through that conversation with DeAngelis, and I got my food from Authorized, I came across, and I was still hungry. Well, before we got food from Authorized, when I screamed that Paul was dead in there, the fireman came down and says, I said, did you find Paul's body? Is he dead? He says, nope, there's nobody in the place, nobody. I said, what do you mean? Paul's in the room. I said, nope, there's nobody in the room. I said, what do you mean nobody in the room? And that's when Paul came walking up in front of 4301 Kingston Road. And so I said, Paul. And that can be shown by the front lobby camera too. You're right. I said, there's a fire. Yeah, it was in your room. It's actually your room. At that point, Paul came up and then he asked about the cats. I said, I asked him about the cats. And then the fireman came back and says, sorry, Mr. Clark, the cats are dead. They died from smoke inhalation. Yeah, those are my baby. Those are my love. So, that went. And when we're going back to the bus, Paul said something odd. He says, well, I may have left my old cell phone. And he started describing the cell phone that it was hold, and it was, and they started mentioning it's a lithium battery, and it says, you know, that may have been the cause of it, and also one of those electrical water heater that you used to keep water warm. And the way it's described, I never paid no attention to it at that time. But I knew that there was always an electrical issue with housing. So I said, well, don't say nothing about it. Just leave it. That's see what I said. Don't say there's anything you can't say. I said, don't say nothing about it. But he keeps referring back to it. I never paid no attention. I said, just don't say nothing about it. Okay? All right? It is important. It has to be, so there was an electrical fire. Tell the man of smoke, there was just no fire. There was just no flame, nothing, just a lot of black smoke. And he keeps going back at it. And now I will tell you why that was odd then. So, after we go through, next thing you know, same color guy interviewed. Come on and says, hey, Mr. Clark, can you come with the car and give a statement? He says, well, I'll run the bus. When to come to the bus, I'll give a statement here. He said, well, no, why don't you come to the car? You'll be more comfortable, you can sit in there. Now, I know it's wrongfully arrested person. They say according to 53 division, 52 division record. So I'm not going to go sit in the back of the car. Well, I didn't do it the wrong way. So I said, no, let's go to the bus. At that point, he got angry and started getting, I said, okay, give your food to the guy here. Oh. She said, why did I give my, he said, give the food to him. I said, no, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. He said, give it, and then get the food on the hand and give it to Paul. I said, okay, give the dog to him. He said, why did I say, then he yanked, and see the high man, and gave it to Paul. I said, I'll give you that and get him back. I said, what? He said, you're under arrest for what? He said,